What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Site Visit. I'm Nick Schiffer, and today we are starting in our South Boston project. You guys remember we talked about the shower. This is a project we're working on with Mary McKee. It is a primary suite renovation, and I'm standing in a marble shower. We've talked about some of the details here, but I want to walk you through them as we get into some of the finishes. First and foremost, it's a steam shower. So real quickly, steam generator sitting here. We have a linen closet on the back side here. We're actually tucking the steam generator up in the closet at the very top. We want to keep it as close to the shower as possible for it to be as efficient as possible. A couple of things that we find when we're preparing a steam shower is one of the things that really matters is what kind of stone or tile that you're using. This is a natural marble, so you actually have to up your steam capacity, which we ran into considerations in the beginning of this project, making sure that the unit was large enough to be able to produce the amount of steam in a large space like this. We have our standard linear drain here. Here's our drain removal tool. For some reason, a lot of you guys don't realize what this is, especially as homeowners, when we leave this in the vanity, but this is to remove the drain. So you're gonna go down here, and you're able to pull that drain body right out. So we're gonna do a little cleaning in that thing, but we've got that tucked. Wall to wall, everything running down hits that drain really nice. You get a shower niche in the back wall here. We're using the chrome Jolly Schluter profile, but I want to talk about this tile. It's got this really cool vertical grain to it. A day before we go to install this, Liz, the assistant project manager on this job, called me and said, "Hey, did you know that these have to be laid out in a very specific pattern?" I was unaware. Thankfully, the homeowner was willing enough to take this and lay it out on the floor, and we realized now standing back, there's this consistent pattern. They're actually cut from larger sheets and creating this consistent graining pattern throughout the space. So if you kind of step back and look, you can kind of see how some of these appear to be cut out of much larger pieces than the actual 12 by 24 pieces that they are for install. Double shower head. We have a handheld. Steam outlets down below, steam control right here. A couple things that we want to make sure that we're doing is right now you can see that this is just into the wall. Before we go to install this controller, all of these areas are going to be completely sealed up because you're basically creating this box of steam. And water is one thing, but steam is going to find its way out a lot easier. So we want to make sure that we're sealing that stuff up. We'll seal around that. We'll seal around the recessed light, which is steam water rated. But check out this. We've left out a couple tiles here. The reason that we've done that is, I'm going to reach up here for a second. This piece is actually just temporarily tacked up there. That will come out, and then we'll be able to take our glass panel and actually tip it in. We have just a ½ inch of clearance, tip it in. We're gonna slide that glass panel over and it's gonna drop down into here. It's gonna go up around the bench, slide into this channel, and then we'll take that top glass channel. This is the Schluter SG. Take that top glass channel, slide it over the glass, adhere it into the blocking that's in that ceiling, and we'll re-waterproof on top of this flange, and then we'll finish off the rest of the tile on that ceiling. That allows that glass to be completely floor to ceiling and completely recessed in glass channel rather than having clips on the wall or anything like that. The one detail we talked about, I just kind of glazed over, is this here. The glass will be cut on an angle. We're actually gonna figure out where that glass is gonna be and kind of clip that corner because you do need an inside radius where that glass is. So we'll clip that corner to allow the glass to slide over, be really tight, and we'll run a bead of silicone on both sides and have a nice watertight finish. But it will allow this cubic, basically this piece of cube stone coming out and it protrudes through the glass. So it has this connection from outside to inside. And at the final part, we'll have our glass door hinged off this wall. And that will be not full height, it will actually go up pretty high. We'll have a transom above. Being in a steam shower, you're either going to want a transom to allow some of that steam to exhaust out, or you're going to want an internal fan in this steam shower. In this case, we chose to do the transom, and then we have an exhaust fan in the main space as well as the toilet room. Down here, you can actually see one of the details we talk about a lot. When we're doing curbless entry showers, we end up waterproofing the entire bathroom. You can actually see our Curdy membrane turned up, and this is right before we put our baseboard on. We've also taken a note, you guys had commented on our Beacon Hill project about an area like this where we had baseboard and water getting out and possibly ruining that. We took that, we implemented it on that job, we actually removed that baseboard and we replaced the bottom part. You can actually turn around here and see this bottom part of this square portion of the baseboard. We're going to replace that with PVC. So if water were to ever make its way out and hit that, we're not going to be destroying the wood over time. That PVC is going to hold up a lot longer. Check out this. This bathtub was actually the original bathtub in this house. It was, in short, a difficult kind of process in figuring out how we were going to utilize this, how we were going to make it meet code, satisfy code, and also get new fixtures. But the homeowners were great. We were able to work with them. She helped source a lot of these fixtures, or basically all the fixtures, and we just kind of took the lead on it and worked with our plumber as well as our guys to figure out how to modify the drain assembly to meet code compliance. And just last week they actually had this thing refinished, which it looks great. I don't know if we have a photo of it before. And I hear that they're gonna actually be coating the outside black. So we're gonna have this black and white theme up here. We're gonna mix that kind of traditional, being that we're in this traditional townhome in South Boston, but also have a little bit more of a modern flair, which you can kind of see with some of this Kuchen Brothers molding that we installed, we talked about last week. You know, some more modern fixtures, and the vanity also, you know, again, juxtaposed to the more traditional elements, has a more modern flair to it. Paint has been is basically wrapped up. We have some touch-ups to do. We have our stair nosing finally installed, but you can kind of see how these walls come together with the natural light pouring into the skylight, and I talk about it a lot. But now with the walls painted, you really get the view of how important it was to make sure that this wall was flat. Looks like someone put their dirty paw print on that wall. We got to clean that up. But nosing is in, stairs are complete. They're working on wrapping up the trim at the lower level, and we're getting prepared for our wood flooring to go in. And the final piece of this staircase will be the handrail, which we've actually taken the profile from the original staircase, essentially extruded that into double back reeds, and then we'll have that handrail that will die right into the wall here. You can also see this bedroom. Everything is painted. We got our Juliet Balcony railing on. Ryan over at RMS Iron fabricated this. Liz right there actually designed it with Ryan. But we got that railing on, so we no longer have access to be able to jump out on that roof. We got Mark Jordan on site. He's actually tying in the roof flashing details around that dormer. And beyond the wood flooring, the last portion will be this awesome fireplace. We're going to be doing a lime strong plaster on that. So it'll be a lime plaster, raw plaster finish, and then we have a stone shelf that wraps around that, and then we're going to be rolling right into the completion of this project. I got to run into a potential project meeting for a new home, actually right down the street from our South Boston project. They want to possibly tear down a home and build a new one. So we'll be right back. So that was a cool project. Existing house here in the city, looking to potentially demolish the existing house due to a handful of reasons. Number one being some zoning issues that they're dealing with the existing structure, but just ultimately poor usage of square footage. So it sounds like they're talking to a couple builders, which I always recommend. But it explained our pre-construction process and the benefit of bringing us on early in the project to make sure that we set up a successful endeavor when it comes to budget, schedule, and overall scope. All right, so last time we were on this site, this area was not closed in. This was actually being decked, and we were standing back in that alleyway. What we're looking at now is we're actually in the future space of the kitchen. This right here is actually going to be an exterior pocket door. So Tim has been working with the guys over at Marvin and getting the details on this. If you can kind of envision a double panel slider door, so you'd have a glass slider that slides in front of another glass panel, In this case, this is actually a pocket, so it's a blank slab. So when you open that door, it slides back in and you exit into the alleyway. The couple reasons we're doing that is it's a tight space on the inside, tight space on the outside. While it does eat up a lot more of the wall cavity, it saves us from having to deal with the swing, which actually this door would swing right into our refrigerator that is on this wall. So we'll get into the design of the kitchen in a future episode, but what we're dealing with now is that you can see up here we have this double LVL, 2x8 LVL. This actually supports the addition that is above. This was actually where the old exterior wall was. And then we have right now a double, is that a 16-inch? Double 16-inch LVL that's supporting the back exterior wall of the existing original house. We've actually had some changes on this. We're gonna actually be reducing the height of that beam because we want to get that beam up flush with the ceiling rather than having a drop beam. The design did call for a coffer ceiling. That through discussion we've decided to eliminate the coffer entirely. So we want to kick that beam up, get that flush. So we're going to increase that to a quad 11-inch LVL. So we get a little rework there. Above me here is actually a framed roof, but we're going to be changing things here. We're talking about putting a 4-foot by 8-foot skylight, depending on lighting layout and things of that nature, but a huge skylight to capture as much natural light. Again, we're in the middle of Charlestown, so we have houses all around us, really limiting the amount of natural light that can come through this pocket door. So we want to capture it from above, and this is a great spot to do that. The guys are actually in what is the original or the first addition on this house that was built, we think 50, 60, maybe 70 years ago. And what they're working on is we've excavated down, we've uncovered the original sewer pipe that ran out into the alleyway. We found that it was all clay. And this was the one opportunity that we could take right now to replace that sewer line. So once we cover this up, this isn't really going to be an accessible area of the house. So we might as well replace it. Our plumber Darb was on site yesterday. They replaced everything with PVC. These guys are doing a little, as they say, buttress work. Cooper's hand mixing bags of cement under a minute per bag with Tim, and getting all the existing foundation. Oh yeah, they were racing. But what we're dealing with here is the existing foundation is just in not that great of shape. So they're just kind of supporting everything. We'll get everything supported. They'll pull these forms, and we'll actually do a rat slab here to prevent anything moisture or rodents for that matter coming up through the bottom. And then we'll reframe this floor, tie this into the addition, and we'll go right into our next step, which will be rough plumbing and rough electrical. Back over here in Cambridge, plaster is just about wrapping up. I want to talk about some tile details that we're prepping for with the plaster. Before we do that, I want to show you guys those built-ins that we've been talking about, flushing out MDF to plaster. So down here, obviously, I say obviously, but it's not obvious, right? We talked about this in a previous episode, getting these future built-ins in place. So let me recap what we're doing here. This is essentially going to be floating shelves. Traditionally, or what we've done in the past, is we'll have steel brackets hanging out or maybe a cleat on the wall, and we would take a floating shelf and we would scribe it to fit, and this would typically be plaster. We would scribe it to fit, and then we end up with typically a micro line. Almost always the inside corners end up wider because the outside corners have a corner bead and get built out, and we just never really get a tight scribe. It's just very cumbersome, and we never really net the result that we're going for. So we took a page out of Fineline's book, and they've actually they did it on a smaller scale, and we've basically taken that and now have done probably hundreds of feet of it, and we've basically taken that stop bead and glued it to our MDF box. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to essentially create a box that's not going to move, a nice square box that we have shelves that will go in. These are all prepped and ready for our floating shelf section. That way, outside dimension is exactly the same as the inside dimension, and then what we're doing is we're going from MDF to plaster with this piece of mud flange. The mud flange, you guys have asked, it's actually a Z bead. It's an aluminum Z bead. We buy this one from Pitcon, and you can get the Fry Reglet. Basically just cutting that leg off and using it as a stop bead. So you have a stop bead, and then your flange. And then what we're doing is we are stapling the flange to our blue board. So the blue board and the flange essentially are connected to the MDF, and the way it's connected to the MDF is that we're epoxying the aluminum bead to the MDF with a couple screws in the face of it. Either way, when all of this is painted, this will all look as though it's all plaster wall, but the shelves will be able to slide in and out really nice. Same thing on here, and you guys can see, this is the example in this rendering, is how it appears to be just floating shelves in between some plaster walls. You know, really great detail, really great looking detail, but hard to accomplish when you're dealing with plaster or in some cases drywall. That mud inside outside corner isn't always true. This is a fantastic detail to make sure it is true. Over here, this is actually going to be a workshop. There's going to be some big doors that kind of block off this space, but I wanted to call attention to what the guys came up with is they want some adjustable shelving in this space. So the guys in the shop actually found these adjustable tracks. I don't think I have the arms here. Essentially, you put the arm in, you can adjust the height of the shelf brackets, but you can see that what they did is they slotted out the blue board. They've installed these right to our solid to our blocking. Colby and his team's going to come by, stop bead right against it. You have these nice flush strips of adjustable wall brackets rather than being adhered on top of the wall. Now, it's a workshop. It's where, you know, the homeowner's going to have kind of, I'm going to just use tinkering for a lack of better terms. This is his tinkering zone. So realistically, we could have made that super utilitarian, but you know, it really only took a little bit of extra time to recess those into the wall. It's just going to be a nicer end result, and that's really what we want to focus on, is making sure that we're looking at things and approaching them in the most intentional and best way we can. You know how I love the word intentional, and that right there is a perfect example of it. You can see, I think last episode we talked about this plastered in door jamb. So we've done this with the easy jams from Easy Concept for the plastered in doors, but we have this hidden door here. We actually fabricated this one very similar to how we did the built-ins over there. We have this MDF jam, and we adhered that mud flange to it with that stop bead. And when this is all closed in, you can see we got our traditional European hinge plates. That door is just an MDF door. It will shut, be completely flush with this wall. It'll get painted wall color, and that's a perfect opportunity for a flush door. Nice tight reveals. That's really important. It's hard to keep these reveals really consistent and then have, you know, a nice clean edge when everything's opened up without having this bulky plastered corner and then a jam on top of that, and then you're trying to shim the jam on top of plaster. It's a really clean result. The door's sitting in here. But this is a utility closet, extra storage. It's actually got a seismograph, I think, I probably saying the wrong word, but he actually measures the vibration of the earth. We can get into that in maybe a future episode when I know more about it, but that's a location for it. I wanted to talk about the staircase. So the staircase is a steel stringer. We've already walked through the details of it, but what we haven't talked about is this side. So when I turn around here, we actually have this triangle piece that kind of hangs down below. Now, it wasn't really necessary to be steel, but in looking at the model, Walker Architects is designing this job. They're great about walking us through the model. They're doing everything in 3D. So when we're trying to figure out a detail, you know, we have Freddie with Walker basically pulling the model up and walking us through what the intent is. And we looked at this on the computer and figured out that, well, why don't we take the C channel that matches this side and essentially, I'm going to use the word air quote, or I'm going to use air quotes, fake a steel channel over here. So we went back and forth and said, all right, well, we need to support this side of the staircase. Let's put a steel channel. How do we do that? And how do we also keep this wall flush with the inside here? There was a lot of things that were going to line up. I'm going to do a terrible job explaining this because it's going to be easier to understand once this comes together. But let me take a stab at it. We have this outside corner bead, which right now is not plastered, but we have essentially this outside corner bead that comes up, and we wanted a really good point of this inside steel C channel lining up. So that is an intentional opportunity to basically align with each other. It's also intentionally stopped. This actually appears as though it sits on top of the plaster. What we've actually done is added a piece of plywood in there essentially as a crush block. Rich Costa fabricated this and recessed some Fastmaster headlocks in here, so it looks really intentional. It looks like it's mounted to the wall. But this is important because underneath the stair, we're actually going to have plaster, and then there's going to be this shadow gap between the edge of plaster, again, stop bead. Let me see if I have a piece. I do not. I'll use this as an example. So you're basically going to bring your blue board over, and you're going to have a small shadow gap between the edge of your plaster and this steel seat channel. So you're going to have this, again, shadow gap. So we didn't want that shadow gap to interfere with this. This is why these need to line up. That shadow gap will continue, and that will continue all the way down. So if you look on that wall, you'll have this continuous, I believe it's a 1/4 inch shadow gap all the way down, so the underside of the stair and the wall appear as though they're separate. Again, celebrating the fact that they're separate. We're not trying to make it that connection. You know, we want them to be different elements here. So you can see that there's, you know, again, repeating myself, why it's so important that this lined up. Continuing up, you know, we could have dyed that into the ceiling. We could have done, you know, we could have just had this triangle stop. You can see, you know, the opportunity for headlocks up here, but we chose to actually take a steel bar and go across. So when you're underneath when you're underneath this stair, it actually matches and mimics both sides. So you'll have that steel going all the way across, and we'll have that nice tight shadow reveal, and it will be really intentional looking. This is the primary bathroom. You can see our tile floor is done prior to us being done with plaster, prior to us doing wall tile, prior to a lot of things. We wanted to get the floor tile down first because, of course, number one, we are doing our recessed glass channel, so this is completely flush. This will be prepped for glass. Our next step in what you see right here is to get the glass in. And why is because we're going to drop our glass into that channel, and we're going to stand it up. We're actually going to recess our glass channel up into the plaster here. So when you're looking at this, it's a floor-to-ceiling piece of glass, no exposed channel. We'll also have a channel on the wall, which will slide over. That flange will face inwards of the shower, and we'll actually waterproof over that flange. Just redundant waterproofing in this case. Of course, we have our wall-to-wall linear drain. You can see it's all the way across. We have our nice Schluter edge profile here, stopping that tile right for that drain. And when this wall tile comes down, it should land right in line, giving us that nice tight reveal all the way around. Again, looking at our curbless detail, just like our South Boston project, you can see on the wall, the Curdy has been turned up everywhere. The guys will come up here, Colby and his crew, and we'll actually plaster this wall down to that point. You can't plaster on top of the Curdy, which is fine because we actually have a baseboard detail in here that will cover that waterproofing. Same thing here, you know, in the locations that we might be worried about water, we'll switch to a PVC bottom course of that baseboard in preparation for really quick. You might see condition like this oftentimes where we have Schluter and then the Weedy product. The Schluter is our go-to for all of our tile waterproofing. The reason that we're switching to a Weedy product in some of these locations is because this is where we go from tile to plaster. This is actually a great base for our plaster coat versus this felt waterproofing membrane. This is more of a cementitious coating to our for a tile backer. So again, tile backer, this is our traditional go-to for waterproofing. This right here is kind of a transition to allow plaster to come over, and then we come over with tile, but still offer our waterproofing detail. Guys, appreciate you watching, as always, this week's episode of Site Visit. Stay tuned tomorrow for an episode of Revealed, and then Thursday for a new episode of the Ennis Builders podcast. Make sure you tune in to my Instagram. I'm going to be going live once a week. I want to make sure you guys join that, where I can answer some of your questions. You guys are great with the comments below. As always, subscribe, turn on notifications, and we will see you next week.